Willa? Wiggle. Fruit salad. Yummy, yummy. Wiggles are queer icons. Happy Pride. Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about my favorite and least favorite books that I read throughout the spring season, now that it's officially summer, although you can't tell given the fact that I'm wearing long sleeves because Scotland is cold. But that's a different conversation. We're here to talk about books. I feel like I have strayed a little bit from the booktube side of this channel. I've been really focusing on the authortube bit, the writing routines, the writing experiments, and that has been great, but I also have a lot of books that I want to talk about. So I am here to talk about a few of them. Not all of the books that I've read this year. That would be a lot. I've read a grand total of 17 books this year, which I know is not a lot by some people's standards. There are plenty of people out there who can do like 17 books in a month. I'm not one of those people. It's taken me 5 months to read 17 books. What I found is I'm not really reading enough to justify a full wrap-up at the end of every month. I don't have enough books to cover. But at the same time, if I wanted to do something quarterly like I do with my stats review, that's a much bigger ask. Holding on to your thoughts and feelings about every single book that you've read over the span of 3 months is very difficult to do. So what I'm doing instead is at the end of the season, as opposed to at the end of the quarter, even though it's the same time span, at the end of the season, I'm going to be talking about my favorite and least favorite books that I read in those 3 months. These are going to be the books that have had the biggest impact on me so far, be that good or bad, the ones that I had the most thoughts and feelings about as I was reading them and then also afterwards. So without further ado, let's dive into spring. We're going to start with my favorite book that I read in March, and that is Mythos by Stephen Fry. This was my first nonfiction of the year. It's an anthology of Greek mythology and stories. I feel like the word anthology implies like stuffy, academic, sitting in a library with dusty books, which I'm not against. I love the library and I love the old books and I love academic writing, but that's not at all what Stephen Fry is. Stephen Fry is too funny for that. I think my favorite thing about this was the way that Stephen Fry wove in connections between mythology and ancient history to the world we live in today through like cultural heritage, through linguistics. It was so well done, so well crafted, so humorous. The humor is very tongue-in-cheek in this one. It's very British. And it was my favorite read of the month of March. Moving on to my least favorite, that was Memorial by Brian Washington. This was a 2-star read for me. It follows a gay couple, Mike and Benson, who spend basically the entire book in 2 different countries. It's lit fic, not romance, just to make that clear. And I knew that going into it. I wasn't expecting like a lovey-dovey romance. I knew that this was going to be lit fic. However, what I did not expect and did not want was a couple who don't really know why they're together, are incredibly apathetic about their relationship with each other and also their relationships with everybody else, who continuously cheat on each other for no other reason than the fact that they don't quite know why they're with each other, and who are also apathetic about their own infidelity to each other and the people that they're being unfaithful with. I just didn't feel like there was any agency in these characters and nothing ever really got resolved, and it didn't seem like either one of them ever really wanted to resolve any of the issues. They just kind of sat and complained and cheated on each other, and that was the extent of the book. Also daddy issues that never got resolved. Anyway, I don't want to rant about this book for too long, but yeah, this was a 2-star read, did not meet my expectations at all, and also was just frustrating as all get out. These characters were so frustrating, and not in the sense of like unlikable main characters. Yeah, they're bad people, but they have an arc, they have growth that they experience. That wasn't the case here. Now, I did get an unlikable protagonist in April, in my favorite read of April, which was You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat. I hope I'm saying that correctly. This follows a queer Palestinian American who gets diagnosed with love addiction and actually goes to rehab to heal her love addiction. She has to reconcile her own self-destructive behavior with her history of yearning for love and acceptance, as well as emotional freedom. I gave this 4.5 stars. Like I said, the main character is definitely not super likable, but she knows that. Like, she knows she's a bad person and she's trying to fix it. And she does have moments of like self-victimization when you're on a journey and you're like, why the fuck is this so hard? Why does everybody else get to be a bad person except for me? She has moments like that. She also has moments of immense growth and reflection, and this whole book just covered so many poignant and kind of universal themes as well, like the search for identity and the experience of the kind of opposing senses of guilt and betrayal coexisting in the same body, and also the way that we all just kind of contort ourselves into the shape of somebody else's love. And mommy issues. This book has a lot of mommy issues. My least favorite read of April is going to sound like a contradiction at first. I think it's gonna sound like a contradiction the whole time I'm talking about it, actually, because I really did enjoy reading this book, but also I hate it. But I loved it, but I hate it. It's Ready or Not by Cara Beth Stone, which I feel like was kind of all over Instagram this spring. It was kind of being pushed, touted as like the springtime city girl romance. This is a best friend's brothers romance about Eve and Shep, which is the perfect name for this character, by the way. He's such a fucking golden retriever. Like, so no thoughts, head empty the whole time, but like he's really happy to see his girlfriend. Anyway, Eve lives in Brooklyn. Shep also lives in Brooklyn. Willa, who's Shep's sister and Eve's best friend, also lives in Brooklyn, but I digress. So Eve is living in Brooklyn when she finds herself unexpectedly pregnant after a one-night stand, and her best friend Willa, who is having her own struggle with infertility and trying to have a baby, really struggles to step up and help Willa. So Willa really struggles to step up and help Eve. So her brother, Shep, who's also a good friend of Eve's, he kind of steps up and he takes the best friend place and really is helping Eve out through her pregnancy. And of course, Shep and Eve, as they get closer around this pregnancy, end up developing romantic feelings for each other and falling into a romantic relationship. Now, I will say I gave this book 4 stars, but for vibes alone. For some ungodly reason, I could not put this book down. I enjoyed it so much. But also, let me tell you everything I hated about it, everything I did not like. For starters, I was skeptical about the pregnancy trope. I really hate it when authors use accidental baby as a deus ex machina to get the main couple together after the third act conflict. I hate that. A baby is not a tool for your plot. A baby is a baby is a person. I knew that that wasn't going to be the case going into this one, so I was less worried, but still a little bit like, romance springs up around pregnancy because of pregnancy? But I picked it up anyway. The romance itself felt very haphazard to me. Like, it wasn't until the midway point that we even got an inkling that Eve might potentially have a crush on Shep. Prior to that, she's actually crushing on her baby daddy. Like, she's crushing on this baby daddy so hard, I was crushing on the baby daddy. And then suddenly she's just drooling all over her best friend's brother, and you had absolutely no inclination from her thought process and from her perspective that that was going to happen. The only reason I knew that this was Eve and Shep's love story is because I was told that in the synopsis. I got none of that from Eve until like 50%. It also didn't feel super well developed, which reminded me of all the things that I hate about Friends to Lovers. Up until this point this year, I've been really considering that I might become a Friends to Lovers girly. This book has changed that. I am back to hating. I am a hater once again. We didn't ever get Shep's perspective, and we also didn't ever really get shown the background of their whole prior relationship. They were friends as kids, and then into adulthood, and all throughout adulthood they've been friends, but we're not really experiencing that. We're not seeing the building of their relationship. We're not seeing the foundation. You're just kind of thrown right into it, which also then made the very sudden crush that Eve has on Shep kind of out of nowhere, seemingly out of nowhere, feel even more haphazard and rushed and underdeveloped. We didn't ever get Shep's perspective either, which means we didn't really learn anything about him that the heroine didn't already know. And while she kind of knew a lot because she had this whole childhood friendship history with him, she also didn't seem to know a lot because she's like, yeah, it's just my friend's hot older brother. And for a majority of the book, he really is just like a no thoughts, head empty, golden retriever goof. And while I get that that can be endearing, I personally didn't find it to be that way. Again, I had a crush on the baby daddy, but also he just felt like a really underdeveloped character, which then went hand in hand with the relationship and the romance itself feeling underdeveloped. And yet, the vibes, I don't know, something about this book had me in a chokehold. I think it might have been the writing. It was very humorous. It was a very funny read. I did have a great time with it. I did give it 4 stars, which tells you how fantastic April was as a reading month. By the way, if this was the worst book that I read in April, I'm happy. We're golden. And finally, moving on to May, I'm actually going to start with my least favorite book because I want to end this on a high note. My least favorite book in May was The Art of Magical Overthinking by Amanda Montell. Amanda Montell wrote Cultish, which I read a couple of years ago and really enjoyed. That was all about the language and linguistics of cult, and that one wasn't quite as like research heavy as I wanted it to be, but I still really enjoyed it. This one, however, just it really felt like it threw research out the window entirely and was so heavily anecdotal that it did not feel like a nonfiction. It felt like a podcast, really. This book, that was my biggest takeaway. This book should have been a podcast. It's billed as cultural criticism and an exploration of cognitive biases, thought processes, and psychological phenomena in the information age, but it really just kind of felt like a thematic memoir, sort of. Again, way too anecdotal for my taste, was not the research-heavy nonfiction that I was looking for, that I was hoping it would be. And again, generally could have been a podcast. Should have been a podcast. 3 stars, because it was mid. It wasn't even bad enough to be under 3 stars. I feel like I almost would have had more respect for it then. Like, it wasn't bad. It was just very mid. And it wasn't what I wanted. But we're gonna move on to a high note, and that is my favorite book that I read in the month of May, and that is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. Princess Gwen and the future Lord Arthur are betrothed. They're supposed to get married, but they can only agree on one thing, and that is that they hate each other. They hate each other so much. They hate each other so much until they are forced to spend an entire summer together, and they both unwittingly end up uncovering each other's deepest, darkest secrets. And what are these secrets, you ask? Well, they're gay. They're so gay. I love them. Art prefers kissing boys, and Gwen has had a lifelong crush on the one lady knight in the entire kingdom. So now they have formed a tentative alliance with the express motivation of, like, if I go down, you're coming down with me. No one spills the beans on these secrets. And in order to keep everyone out of their respective business, they pretend to be happily courting one another. If you like queer found family, read this book. If you want medieval teenagers sneaking out and breaking the rules, read this book. If you just generally want to be kicking your feet and giggling like a little schoolgirl with a crush, read this book. It was so cute. This honestly was exactly what I needed to get me through to the next Casey McKiston release, if you will. I would absolutely, having read this now, put Lex Croucher in the same category, in the same tier as Casey McKiston, who is one of my comfort authors. I will have you know. I don't know if I've said that before on this channel. That's a lie. I have said that before on this channel, and I know it. But I say that to say, if you like Casey McKiston, and if you like feet kicky butterfly type gay romance, you should read Gwen and Art Are Not in Love. And those are my favorite and least favorite books from the spring season. I hope you guys have gotten some good, I mean, listen, I started discourse with myself while talking about Ready or Not. So if you have any discourse you want to start, feel free, leave a comment down below, and I will be so happy to discuss these books with you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell to see when I post new ones. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love y'all so much, and until next time, peace out, Brussels sprouts.